All right, today I'm going to be demonstrating the effects of shutter speed on the interpretation of a subject. Now, typically with motion picture, we're going to choose a shutter speed that is twice as fast as our frame rate. Currently with this camera, I am filming at 24 frames per second, but I'm using a shutter speed of 1/48th of a second. With motion picture, typically we try to use a shutter that's called a 180-degree shutter. Now I'm simulating a 180-degree shutter by using a 48th of a second. But I'm going to show you the effects of that on motion. So as I move this yardstick around, you're going to notice that there is a bit of blur. You're seeing some blur in the motion because as the shutter is open, allowing light to come in, we are seeing it blur through that. It's kind of like it is visually smudging, if you will. And that is a 48th of a second. Now in a moment, I'm going to switch over to a faster shutter speed, and then you're going to see a different interpretation of that motion. Okay, now I have switched my shutter speed over from a 48th of a second to 1/2000th of a second, a much faster shutter speed. Now you're probably already noticing a little bit of difference in how motion is represented. But now as I swing this yardstick around, you're going to notice there's kind of a big difference. And I'm still filming at the same frame rate. I'm still filming at 24 frames per second. However, my shutter speed has changed to 1/2000th of a second. And you'll notice that it kind of has a stroboscopic look. Now you might see this type of effect in action films where they choose a faster shutter speed to communicate a more intense action, so that if someone is moving across the screen, that motion almost seems like it teleports from location to location. Although it's taking the same amount of time, by using that faster shutter speed, we get the interpretation that the movement is somehow faster. So we're going to take a look in one side of the frame where we're seeing a 48th of a second and another side of the frame where we're seeing at 2000th of a second. The same motion. So let's take a look at that. Well, I hope that helps you understand the difference between shutter speeds and the interpretation of a subject. Now, if you want it to seem most filmic and perhaps most natural, you want to make sure that you choose a shutter speed that is twice as fast as your frame rate. So again, if you're filming at 24 frames per second, you would choose a shutter speed of 1/48th of a second, and that would simulate 180-degree shutter. Otherwise, if we want to accentuate motion while still maintaining the same frame rate, what we can do is we can choose a faster shutter speed, and that will add some intensity. Now, sometimes filmmakers will actually do that technique even though there is not action going on. And what it does to us as viewers is it can heighten the tension, and it can make that scene seem a little more intense even though it's not, and then we anticipate something. Now you do have to be careful with that type of effect, because sometimes you get your audience worked up and you're really not delivering. Or it could be distracting where you're seeing this stroboscopic effect when you're really not trying to build tension. So you as a filmmaker need to make that wise choice in how do you want to really communicate the subject.